running a startup is a bit like chewing on glass. I think that is actually pretty accurate for what day-to-day startup life actually looks like. It's no wonder most startups fail, because you have to have an absolutely crazy, superhuman level of perseverance to keep going, because no idea is so good that it kind of self-forms itself. You have to sort of get rid of that perfectionism mindset and just focus on how do you actually get going, like how do you create momentum behind what you're doing. And I think that's the most important thing.
So Joe, welcome. You must be super busy right now.
I think being a startup founder, it's one of those jobs, looks very glamorous on the outside, but the inside is all drudgery. So Elon Musk has got that famous quote, which is running a startup is a bit like chewing on glass. I think that is actually pretty accurate for what day-to-day startup life actually looks like.
So let's talk about what business you actually own. Zero Gravity. Talk me through that. What type of company is it?
Sure. So we're a tech startup that powers students from low opportunity backgrounds into top universities and careers. So in many ways, it actually stems from my own personal experience. So I grew up in a small town in the north of the UK called Morley, which is sort of between Leeds and Wakefield, suburban, northern, sort of market town vibes. And I grew up in a single parent household. My mum's a speech therapist in the NHS. And I went to state schools. I just saw firsthand how difficult it was for students like me in the area I grew up to break into elite institutions. Like when it came to going to university, okay, there was more people going to university when I was growing up. But in terms of those like top universities and top employers, it was just like a complete alien ambition for most young people like me living in a sort of northern town. And I was one of the lucky ones. I managed to win a place at Oxford University, which was a life-changing moment for me, not a normal thing to do for someone from Morley in West Yorkshire. Indeed, actually, in the year I graduated from Oxford, not a single person from the parliamentary constituency of Morley got a place at Oxford. And like these constituencies are like 100,000 people. Not a single person got in. So that sort of shows how weird it was to go to that sort of institution. But when I graduated, I wanted to do something about this problem. And I saw that the politicians kept talking about this. Businesses said they want diversity. Universities were being regulated on being more represented in the country. I thought, if I can create the business solution to this problem, I can create a startup that not only creates an incredible social impact, but actually is sustainable in the long term. A genuine good business. And that's where Zero Gravity came from, I suppose.
So would you say it came from a place of pain, the business?
Personal pain, yeah. Like I wanted to help the future generations of people like me. I in many ways got lucky because, yes, I was sort of born with natural talent, but I had sort of mentors along my journey who helped me navigate the process, whether it was my mum growing up who sort of gave me the fundamental values that you need to navigate any competitive process, or whether it was my gran who sort of cultivated my passion in politics and economics. Every Christmas she would get me like books, which at the time I didn't like that because like as a 9-year-old kid, you want a PlayStation game or something like that. But she was the person who was cultivating my passion and interests. And then there were certain teachers, and I think without those people, I just wouldn't have made it. And what I want to do is essentially take out the luck factor of getting into one of these top universities or careers. So no matter where you live, no matter what background you're from, you can use Zero Gravity to get access to opportunity, and we'll work with you to make your potential reality.
So would you say, if I'm right in saying this, there's a lot of politics when it comes to universities and who they pick?
I think universities, especially the top universities, just aren't representative of the country. Like growing up in Morley in West Yorkshire, there was very little vivid inequality. If your dad owned a BMW, that meant you were kind of like minted as a family. But then suddenly I went to Oxford and I was meeting people who'd been privately educated since the age of 3, who had like private tutors on tap. And to use the cliche, people walking around with their parents' or Amex black cards, just things I'd never seen before growing up in a suburb up north. And it kind of was a Emperor's Got No Clothes moment where I realised that actually there's people out there living completely different lives to me who had a huge amount of resource. And it's no wonder that they've kind of made it, given across the journey, having constant resources, mentorship, network and support. And if you're a student who doesn't have any of that, you are completely reliant on your kind of raw natural talent and almost like a superhuman level of drive and resilience. And that's what I want to to change. And it is, in many ways, it's political. Even though Zero Gravity were very focused on unlocking people's potential rather than protesting on the streets or trying to change policy, it's political in a way, because in the UK, as I'm sure you know, like, we live in a country where what background you're from, unfortunately, does dictate most of the time what you can achieve. And I think unless we change that, we're not just wasting a huge amount of talent, we're creating a society which is broken and unfair. I don't think that's sustainable in the long term, personally.
Yeah, it's sad to know that. I would say you would think that people that go to Oxford are quite privileged, in the sense that what you just spoke about, rich parents have helped them throughout their journeys. But when you've got people like yourself that have broken that mold, I think it's so important. Because like you said, depending on your age, your race, sometimes that can be factored into you getting accepted. Would you say that?
And there's big questions of identity as well, because if you're from a more low opportunity area and you go to one of these universities, quite naturally it does change. Not only how you see yourself, but how other people see you as well. So I remember when I got my offer for Oxford, it's like people would joke that I was a posho. I was running down south to be with the Bullingdon Club. It wasn't helpful that at the time there was a movie that had come out in the cinemas called Riot Club. Have you seen that before?
No, I haven't.
So this was a movie that kind of dramatised the sort of Bullingdon Club at Oxford, smashing up restaurants, just being sort of privileged pricks, really. And people saw that movie and thought, is that actually what you're going to do? Is this the new life you're stepping into? And it was quite difficult because in many ways I was caught between two identities. My new identity I was stepping into of Oxford student, posh, privileged, intelligent. And then my identity growing up in a more working class area where I didn't want to feel alienated from what I was stepping into, but I also didn't want to lose my roots either. So you get put in this weird position from an identity point of view where you kind of have imposter syndrome on the one hand, also some guilt about what you're stepping away from. So I tried and sort of learned over time how to navigate those questions of identity, where I could keep in touch with the things that made me me. I'm a big football fan. I still go and watch my team, Hull City, every weekend or two, and away from home. I've hung on to those things, my upbringing. But then I do also have new interests as well. Like, I'm a bit of a nerd. I like politics. I like going to talks, stuff like that. And that's stuff that I probably did inherit from my time at university. And trying to navigate both those at the same time is difficult, but something you just got to learn over time.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't fortunate enough to go to any of those unis. I went to Sheffield Hallam, which is obviously nowhere near as great as Oxford. What's it like being a founder of a company? Like, a lot of people say that quit your 9 to 5, do a business. Someone that is sitting in front of me that has created a successful business, is it as easy as people say, that just leaving your job and creating a business?
No, it's definitely not easy. But I'm biased in a way because I started Zero Gravity straight out of university. And the reason I did that, to be honest, was just probably out of complete naivety and delusion, which is I had this problem I wanted to solve. How do you break that link between background and opportunity? I thought I had a solution, building technology to identify top talent from low opportunity areas and give them the support they need to get in. And I just thought, I'm going to do this now, because even though I was 21 years old and I had no money, I had no experience, I had very few skills, I thought this is the one time in my life where I actually don't have the responsibilities and obligations that will stop me from doing something like this. Now, once you get older, you start getting a partner, kids, financial liabilities, a mortgage. You have all these obligations that stop you from taking a risk. And the beauty of doing something young is, even though you're kind of hollow on experience, you're quite high when it comes to risk tolerance. So I just sat out and I started doing it. But straight away, my naivety was kind of overthrown, as I realized that the stuff you learn in the movies about being an overnight success just isn't true in reality.
Yeah.
And to be honest, even in the first 6 months, even when we were getting traction and there was various successes, I was still banging my head against the wall constantly thinking, is it really this hard to start a business? Surely it can't be this hard, because it's just really, really difficult to build something from nothing. It's no wonder most startups fail, because you have to have an absolutely crazy superhuman level of perseverance to keep going, because no idea is so good that it kind of self-forms itself and just becomes successful overnight. Like you have to push and push and push. And my experience starting Zero Gravity is I had 200 quid left from my student loan. I didn't have resources. So a lot of it was just dependent on my time, effort, the skills I learned. And I just had to keep going. And to be honest, it took me a good 12 months before I was in a position where I could even make or claim that Zero Gravity was a proper business. I worked completely for free for the first 12 months. I had no salary, I had no resources. Many people, that would look like a side project. So it took a year for me to kind of go from bedroom mode to what could properly be called business mode. And that time span is very different from the overnight success you see in the movies.
Yeah, but then for you, it's that work overnight. But then people think that, oh, look, he's now successful, but they haven't seen what happens behind closed doors, behind what you're working on. And I think the beauty of what you've created is that it's yours. You've done it, you've made it. So there's a lot more purpose behind it. And because it was built off pain, you're more likely to stick with it. I think a lot of people see the movies, see what people talk about online and go, oh, I want to do that, not having it in their heart. But because you've come from a place of pain, it's a lot easier for you in regards to when you're feeling down. Obviously, you all have doubt, right?
Yeah.
But the purpose is a lot stronger than the disciplines.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people, they compare starting a company to almost like going to the gym or saving money in a bank account, which is, it's the power of compounding. It's about trying to get 1% better week after week. And the difficulty with that and that sort of exponential curve you get out of it is the beginning of it is pretty flat. So when you're looking at your progress week to week, month to month at the beginning, you can't really see any change. And that's really demotivating because you don't get that feedback loop that makes you feel like you're creating progress. If you stick with it long enough and you are able to get on that 1% per week curve, in the long term, you do something for 12 months, you start to see massive results. People know that about going to the gym. Yeah. They know that about saving in the bank account. But people don't appreciate it's exactly the same dynamic with a startup. But to stay on that curve, you need to have superhuman levels of resilience. You have to have a clear reason why you're willing to persevere through that flat period before you start getting any tangible signs of success. And this is why I think starting a business that speaks to a problem that you faced yourself is a competitive advantage, because that you'll get the passion and perseverance by default. If you're starting a business not based on a personal experience, you almost have to kind of invent your reason for doing it. So I think you've got a competitive advantage if you're like me, you start a business that almost solves your own problems. So I'd always recommend that for wannabe founders. Reflect on the problems you faced in life and start there.
No, it's great. It's a great way to start a business. And I kind of want to know if you could describe your journey in 3 separate words it can be from any point. What would those 3 separate words be?
Well, one of the values we've got at Zero Gravity is called run towards danger, which is a phrase I quite like. And the reason I'd say run towards danger is if you're starting a business from scratch, you constantly have to put yourselves in situations where you're uncomfortable. So I didn't have any of the skills I needed to start Zero Gravity when I got going. Like I had fairly basic coding skills. So I could sort of build a website, build a basic product, but not a product that was delightful or inspiring to use. I had intuitions about how to use social media, but I had no idea how to build a proper brand identity or a marketing strategy. So I had to constantly put myself in situations where I was uncomfortable, where I was the kind of dumbest person in the room and learn these skills over time. And like when it comes to like, raising investment, for instance, when I started, like raising investment was something that I just thought that your Richard Bransons or your Elon Musks did. Like when I was sat there with just 200 quid in my bank account to start Zero Gravity, the idea that you could do what we've done now, where we've raised £6.5 million of investment, that seemed completely unfathomable. But I just had to put myself in situations of discomfort, meeting people who I wouldn't usually meet, feeling that imposter syndrome, risking the embarrassment of not knowing what you're doing. You have to constantly run towards danger. And that's a mindset I've just cultivated over time, you almost have to enjoy the discomfort. And when you walk into that room and you start to get that weird feeling in your tummy, that sort of pangs of discomfort, it's one of those things where you've almost got to enjoy that. And that is a difficult psychological trick to pull off, because your brain tells you in those situations, get out now.
Yeah.
But like running towards danger, I'd say, is my 3-word catchphrase.
It is your 3-word. Yeah, I love that, because a lot of people are too scared to put themselves in uncomfortable situations, like you just said. And I think so many people have so much potential that have a pain, that want to create something, but because they're too scared and fearful to put themselves in those uncomfortable situations, it never gets fulfilled. And then they end up staying in the rat race, not fulfilling their dream, becoming unhappy, staying average, when all they have to do is step outside their comfort zone and see what happens.
It's a bit of a cliche, but the education system plays a big role here, which is everyone's taught from the age of 11 to 18 to be a perfectionist. Like, you're judged based on a set of scores and exams where there's a mark scheme, you get a score out of 100, no grade, and your mind is conditioned as a result of that environment to just optimize towards getting 100%. That's what good looks like. But the difficulty with startups is there's no specification. There's no mark scheme. There's no grade you get at the end of the day. There is nothing to optimize towards. So you have to sort of get rid of that perfectionism and mindset and just focus on how do you actually get going? Like, how do you create momentum behind what you're doing? And that often means being not only more willing to make mistakes, but having to lower your embarrassment threshold. I remember when I put out the first version of the Zero Gravity website, a shit logo, like terrible branding, really poor brand messaging. And I wasn't proud of it, but I knew I needed to do something to get going. And I had to lower my embarrassment threshold. I had to put something out that I wasn't completely comfortable with, that I didn't sort of feel comfortable showing that to my friends and family and standing behind that as a product. But getting that velocity in terms of being willing to move quickly is the most important thing at the start of your journey as a startup founder, because the last thing you want to do is spend 12 months just analyzing what you're trying to achieve. Like, that is analysis paralysis. Like, you have to find a way to get on that 1% curve, and you can only do that if you just get going. So drop your embarrassment threshold and run towards danger. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm very much someone that won't start something until it's perfect. For example, the podcast, I'm very particular. As you can see, the setup is very nice. People have said, "Oh, come here," but I'm like, I want it to be pristine. And I lost my train of thought.
But I think you're right, though. But perfection is something that you can instill over time. Like, you think of like companies that people respect for their high standards. Apple, for instance, every Apple product that you buy, it's beautifully designed, incredible hardware. The software just works. But Apple was literally started in a garage. Back in the day, it was Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs sort of sat in this sweaty garage, sort of playing around with like wires and stuff. Even a company that now is regarded as having the very highest standards of software and industrial design, back in the early days, started off by having to drop their embarrassment threshold. So you don't need to see this as compromising on your long-term perfectionism. It's a great thing to have high standards, but don't let your high standards slow you down at the start of the journey, where the most important thing is starting the race rather than just being stuck in your own head, constantly overthinking what you're doing.
No, exactly. And it brings me back to what I was going to say. Fail fast. Fail early. Know what you've done wrong. Drop the embarrassment. Don't get stuck in your own ways of, it needs to be perfect, because nothing's going to get done, which is always a shame. So at what point, I know you kind of mentioned it, but what point of the mindset shifted for you when you were like, yeah, I can do this. This is going to be successful for Zero Gravity?
I think at the beginning, it's not about revenue. Like, revenue is nice, and you need that to create a successful business. But you should focus on creating value before you focus on trying to capture that value. And the first time I knew that this was going to work or have a good chance of working is when I genuinely saw students on our platform were getting huge value out of what we were doing. So that the first cohort of members on the Zero Gravity platform, we had 150 17-year-olds who essentially used our platform to apply to top universities. And then within 6 months, we got the results out of that. And 50 of them had got into Oxbridge, and the other ones had got into a smattering of incredible universities. And back in those early days, I literally used to know every single one of those students by name. Again, this is not the kind of glamorous startup founder thing of having a dashboard of data points. In the beginning, I literally knew all of our kind of, I suppose, consumers by name. And I would ring them up to sort of learn about how they use the platform, how it genuinely made a difference. And there was a number of them who, unprompted, literally were like, zero gravity was the thing that changed my path and changed my life. And that wasn't based on the questions I was asking. People were saying that completely unprompted. And that made me think, as someone who was quite a cynical northerner, wow, this product, when it does work, actually really deeply is affecting people's chances. And they're attributing that success to us. I thought that was a really good sign of actually creating genuine value. So even though we hadn't sold a single contract at that point, we made no revenue, I had tangible markers that actually the people who used our product, even at that point where there was only 150 people, were genuine brand advocates. They loved the product and it was making a big difference. And that was the thing that I suppose created a lot of momentum. And it takes years sometimes to go from creating value to capturing value, especially if you're operating in a space where the business model is not necessarily straightforward, but focusing on building value is the most important thing in the early days. So as a founder, you just kind of try and work out, how do you properly detect whether your product is genuinely creating value for people or whether it's just perceived value, which isn't really there. That's the most important thing.
So I'm a student. I want to apply to unis. What will zero gravity be doing for me in like the back end? Like, what's the technical stuff? Is it personal statements? Like, what does the platform actually do in order to add that value?
Well, the first thing is we spot you, we identify you, and we tell you that you've got potential that you may not necessarily even see in yourself. So we've built an algorithm that we've connected into over 900 state schools in the UK, which essentially spots students in those schools who come from the sort of bottom 40% of socioeconomic backgrounds, but have got clear indicators of potential. So it might be that student going to that bad comprehensive school in Sunderland who has got good grades, but maybe they don't think that they're a kind of A player. But compared to their friends, they're like doing 2 or 3 grades better than their friends. That student often, even though they might think that they're bright, they don't know that they've got the potential to do incredible things. The first thing we do is actually spot and identify students like that using our algorithm, and we tell them, we think you're special. We think you've got the potential to break into top institution, and we are going to be the organisation that supports you to do that. That's the first thing we do. And then that kid in Sunderland, when they come onto our platform, essentially we equip them with the sort of support and mentorship they need to break into these elite institutions. So we'll connect them with a mentor who currently studies at the university that they want to go to, same subject, who they can work with in sort of weekly video conversations. So we've built an entire structure around that. We connect them with content delivered directly from the universities to them. So like most kids, they might get a once a year talk from their teachers at school about getting to university. It's often not great because often those teachers haven't gone to the institutions these kids want to go to. So people just turn off. But we connect the universities directly with the students so they can learn firsthand what it takes to get in, which if you're a 17-year-old living in a small town, you usually just don't get that exposure through your classroom. And then the other thing we do is we actually connect these students into online communities as well. And the reason that's important is if you're the best kid in your state school in Sunderland, the people around you probably don't share your ambitions. Like you feel like a little bit of an alien who is on a different path to your friends and family. Like often you don't feel understood, you have that sort of identity crisis. So what we do is we connect you with other students like you, who have the same ambitions and are from similar backgrounds. And the reason that's important is what we've seen over time is that it's much easier to succeed when you've got a peer group around you than it is to succeed as a lone ranger. Most people know this intuitively. Like, why are private schools so incredible at getting great academic and career outcomes? Yes, they've got more resources, better teachers, blah, blah, blah. But it's also because you're surrounded by lots of kids like you, same ambitions, same path. And that sort of creates that feedback loop. We've constantly got that almost like competitive pressure to succeed. If you're a kid from a low-income background in Sunderland, you don't have that by definition. So we create that on the platform. And I'd say that is the kind of almost like cultural tailwind behind everything we do. That you're not just going at it alone. You're going at it with not only an organization that backs you, but other people like you as well. It's about making people feel special.
Yeah.
Like they have something that's part of them that other people don't have. And they've been recognized in a group of people who are also on that same journey with you at the same time.
It's revolutionary what you've created.
I hope so.
No, it is. Like, you just explaining that to me now. If I was a kid going to uni, those opportunities wasn't presented 10 years ago. This tech that you've produced, nothing was there. Do you have competitors? Are there other people that do this sort of stuff?
So we've supported over 15,000 students into top unis now. And I think the reason the numbers have scaled so quickly is for lots of people out there is just no other option. Like, I think it may be a bit different if you live in a city like London. Like if you live in London, for instance, if you're from a low-income background, you probably still go to a really good state school. You probably still live in an area where, you know, your cousin or your friend of a friend works at Morgan Stanley or KPMG, whatever it is. So if you live in an urban hub, you're more likely to have support, even if you're from a low-income background. But if you're a kid living in a kind of small and medium-sized town in the UK, often there's just nothing whatsoever. There's no universities coming to your school. You don't have a single professional in your network. Your parents didn't go to university. Your friends don't share your ambitions. So zero gravity for a lot of these kids is their kind of go-to place to get into these top elite institutions. And I think it's a shame that there hasn't been more people doing this beforehand. But I think the reason for that is just no one before now has thought to use technology to tackle this problem. A lot of people in the education and career sector, they think everything can be solved with classroom talks and they're like doing the university milk round, like stalls in assembly halls. Like those are 20th century solutions to a 21st century problem. No one's thought to use tech to tackle this before now. And I think that is the zero gravity sort of distinctive approach.
And as an entrepreneur, do you feel like that needs to be kind of taught in schools? Some sort of, I know they teach business, but they don't really teach you business. I did business. It's not like running your own business. Do you think that should be part of the curriculum?
There's a debate, isn't there? It's like, you know, are entrepreneurs born or made? It's a difficult question to answer. I think there's some traits I definitely got as almost like an accident of my background. So, for instance, I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be incredibly resilient and able to deal with adversity because you're constantly getting punched in the face, metaphorically, because everything you do doesn't work at the beginning. You have setbacks and you have to sort of be able to work through that. And I think I had a lot of resilience because growing up in a single parent background, in my childhood, I had to face adversity in the face. And even though that felt pretty awful at the time, it did instill that resilience within me. So in that sense, I sort of had some traits which I just inherited by accident. But in terms of actually cultivating some of the stuff, I think some of these skills can be learned and taught. So like, for instance, the entrepreneurial mindset, some people have that naturally, but I do think it is something that can be taught. Now, how to create speed in your decision making, like how to take calculated risks, like how to look at problems in an entrepreneurial way. There's frameworks and ways to do that, which when you know them, they're pretty straightforward and pretty useful. But these things aren't being taught in the classroom. In the classroom, it's kind of A-level maths and geography. Like no one's teaching these skill sets. And to not sound like a kind of doom and gloomer, I think unless we change that, I think we're going to see a really big effect in terms of the next 10 years with AI because look, whether we like it or not, a lot of these skills that were taught previously are now going to be commoditized. Like you're going to be able to use AI to write incredible prose, be able to use AI to solve complex mathematical problems. What AI probably can't do is create a vision, manage a team, show leadership, build systems across an organization. Maybe it will be able to do that stuff in 30 years, but I think in the next 10 years, that's unlikely. So those entrepreneurial skills are actually more important than ever before because those are going to be the skills of the future, which people are going to need to be able to use AI to actually get stuff done. in the real world. So I think the education system is going to need to catch up quickly to this new world that we're going into. So a lot of the skills that were taught before are going to become increasingly redundant.
Yeah, well, I guess with AI, knowledge will eventually become worthless, right? Because if you can get it in a couple of seconds, it's rendered useless now. If you think about it, would you agree with that? Or
I don't think it's necessarily that knowledge will become worthless, but it will definitely become something that is far more accessible. Like Wikipedia and Google made information very accessible, but even though anybody can reach your information immediately through their smartphone, that doesn't mean that everybody's suddenly on a level playing field in terms of their ability to actually apply information to create an impact.
yeah,
I think AI is going to be the next level above that, where everyone's now going to have access to something on their phone and laptop that can actually not just find information, but actually use information to do stuff. And the question's going to be, do we actually give people the right skills to work with AI systems and AI agents, be able to do stuff in the best possible way? And unless you give people those skills, you're going to see a similar situation as with the internet, where some people use the internet and get a massive productivity boost out of that, while some people are left behind. So this is just going to be like the internet on steroids, which is, at the moment, I'm worried that a small group of people are going to capture pretty much all of the value of the AI revolution, and other people are just going to be left behind. If we don't change our education system, then we're in massive danger of that happening.
what do you think would need to change in order to get that into the educational system's heads? Because would you say it's quite corrupt, the educational system?
I don't think it's directly corrupt, because I don't think government ministers walk about thinking we deliberately want to set up a system where kids from high income backgrounds are 6 times more likely to get into top unis than kids from low income backgrounds. I don't think it's corrupt in that way. But I think the system has just been corrupted over time, where the way it's been built has naturally created these massive inequalities where some people do great and a lot of people are left behind. And I think people just have accepted that as the status quo. Like, that's just how things are. That's how things are supposed to be. But I think when we look across the world, some countries do this much better than others. And it's up to us in the UK to find a way to rebuild our system, to give people the skills of the future and make sure nobody's left behind. So kids right now should be getting taught in classrooms how to use AI. I'm always massively concerned when I speak to 16-year-olds, and some of them are absolutely whizzes with ChatGPT. They know how to prompt it. They know how to get the outcomes that they want, whilst others are not using it at all. They can't afford a 20 quid per month subscription. No one's telling them how to actually use AI bots to create real meaningful impact in their life. And this is just the beginning, this revolution, right? So I'm worried if we don't give kids the skills to actually interface with AI, we're going to get some people who their productivity is going to absolutely race off into stratosphere, whilst other people are going to be kept at the same level we are now. So we're going to see inequalities widen unless people have the skills to use these tools.
And are you planning on using it in zero gravity?
We already use it. We were one of the first businesses in the UK to integrate the ChatGPT API into our platform. So the first thing we did is we built a sort of fine-tuned AI bot to help students research universities. It was very basic. It was essentially just giving people access to ChatGPT directly through our platform and giving them a bit of guidance about how to prompt it in the right way. But over time, we've increased the sophistication of that. So one of the things we've released recently is we've released something called learning tracks on our platform. With employers, we've built these little learning courses to teach students the skills they need to break into a particular job role. But we've used AI to essentially be able to test and assess whether people have learnt the content in a gamified way.
Okay.
That's a feature which before AI would have taken years and years to build. You know, like the Duolingo style way of assessment, that stuff takes a hell of a lot of resource to build. With AI, it's now very easy to create assessment questions, mark them, and give really good feedback. So that's a new feature we've released. But I think businesses that integrate AI into their core systems and use it to create real value for consumers are going to be the ones that define the next 10 years. And we're doing that at Zero Gravity because we're a tech platform. But I'm worried that lots of other education businesses just aren't thinking about this whatsoever at the moment, which I think is concerning.
Do you have your views on the whole AI turning against us and all of that stuff that people talk about? It's going to corrupt the world, take over the world.
The sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, all that jazz.
Look, I'm not an expert. I think I'm more worried about the like less sci-fi risks of AI. So I think the biggest problems we're going to see is how the bad actors use AI over the next 5 years to create disruption. So people using AI to spread fake news, misinformation, people using AI to be able to do stuff that before was kind of protected or regulated. Like, are we going to see the terrorist groups be able to use AI to get ahead in the weapons building process? I think those risks are actually more immediate and bigger than the sci-fi risks of, is AI going to kind of break out of its confines and take over the world? So I think it's human beings using AI that are going to create the risks in the short term, rather than AI breaking away from its masters.
Yeah. So it's the intentions of the human beings itself.
Yeah. And that's what we've seen from previous tech revolutions as well, right? Like, people had these same worries when the internet and World Wide Web was created. And like, what we saw is that the biggest issue wasn't, people used to get very worried about computer viruses, breaking the entire world economy. It wasn't that was the issue. It was people using the internet to do bad things, overthrow elections, manipulate people, fraud. It was human beings using tech to create bad outcomes. And I think we'll see the same thing with AI as well.
No, it's a good. I think I totally agree. But let's jump ship a bit. Biggest challenge that you've sort of faced as a founder building Zero Gravity up?
I think in general, if you're running a business, you have to be a bit like a Pokemon, which is like you have to constantly evolve as your business evolves. So my biggest challenge is, when I started Zero Gravity, I was a founder. I was an introvert. I was directly doing stuff, executing. As we've grown over time, I've had to move from being a founder to also being a CEO as well. That's not just a fancy job title. That's actually a fundamental change in what you do every day. Like, nowadays, I'm not sat down coding the platform anymore. I'm not writing the social media posts. I'm not running the entire sales process. I've had to sort of build systems to do that, hire the right people, create the right culture, help set the strategy. And that's a completely different mindset and set of responsibilities from being a founder, where you're actually doing the stuff yourself. And I've had to evolve over time, because as an introvert, managing people, leadership was not something that I was kind of intuitively interested in, or maybe even like good at. So I had to kind of learn these new things over time. It's been on that constant learning journey, which is the main thing. The person you were 5 years ago when you started the company cannot be the person that you are now. If you don't adapt and change as a founder, your company is going to die, because whether you like it or not, often you are the most important person in the company. The company's going to live and die based on your own performance and how you get performance through other people. So unless you're willing to change, unless you're willing to evolve and get better at the things that you need to be good at that time, your company's not going to go anywhere. And that's the thing I had to get on board with pretty quickly.
What's it like working with people, like hiring and stuff? Because it's a big responsibility. How big is Zero Gravity?
Around 25 people now. So a big change from my bedroom startup days when I was doing this by myself. Like, with hiring, I think before you hire anyone, you have to sit down and be very honest with yourself about not just what skills you need and what job responsibilities, but what sort of person you want to define your company. So before I thought about what job roles do I need, I sat down, I literally penned on paper, what sort of culture do I want to build at Zero Gravity? Like, what are the kind of core values that I want to hire for and see in other people? So like, run towards danger, which we spoke about.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I knew was really important to me. So I wanted to find people who demonstrated that kind of mindset in their life. And there was sort of 2 or 3 other things as well. I think getting really clear on that is so important, because when you're a small company, like, skills can be learned, but behavior is very difficult to change. So you should try and recruit people who absolutely encapsulate your core values And even if they're not very skilled yet, even if these are kind of like doe-eyed 21-year-olds who don't have any experience or skills, in my opinion, far better to hire someone with the values and behaviors you want, but not the skills, than to hire a really skillful person who doesn't actually have the attributes that you want to define someone who works at your company. And the reason that's so important is behaviors rub off on other people.
Yes.
If you surround yourself with loads of people who run towards danger, everyone will naturally do it because everyone else is doing that as well. It's kind of like a learned behavior. It's constantly being reinforced. Surround yourself with people with the wrong behaviors, people who are political, too diplomatic, finger pointing. That rubs off other people as well. So it's either a virtuous circle of positive behaviors or it's a cancer of bad behaviors. So in my opinion, nail the behaviors in your hiring process. The skill stuff doesn't matter quite as much.
Yeah. And have you had those negative experiences with employees in the past?
Yeah, I think no matter how good you think you are at hiring, you're always going to make mistakes because in the hiring process, like you maybe get 4 or 5 hours with people max. So you essentially have to take a calculated bet based on 5 hours worth of information, whether that person kind of ticks your behaviors boxes or not. And 95 times out of 100, we get that right. But 5 times out of 100, we get that wrong. And the main thing there, I've just had to learn is as soon as you see the behavior stuff go badly wrong, cut your losses as quickly as possible. Okay. And that was something that was not natural to me at the beginning of my journey because I always wanted to give people a second chance. I didn't maybe want to have the discomfort of having to have a difficult conversation with people. But I've learnt now for experience in that first 3 to 6 months, if you see there's certain behaviors which are fundamentally wrong, you just got to cut your losses. Different question with skills. Skills can be taught. Yeah. But if behaviors are not there, it's not good for you or the person to let things keep going. And that's something I've had to learn over time. Almost that, I wouldn't say it's ruthlessness because I think it's the best thing for everyone, but it's being able to lean into discomfort and sort problems before they blow up into bigger ones.
Yeah, no. I've never really managed, I haven't managed any. The only people that I really manage is people that do the podcast. And most of the time, they don't work directly under me. So on Fiverr, they're my editors or they do thumbnails or whatever. On the flip side, I know a big success is you won Entrepreneur of the Year under 30s in 24. What's a big success that you take a lot of pride in that you've done? Doesn't necessarily have to even to be anything related to zero gravity. It can be something a bit more personal. But what is that one success that you're really proud of?
Yeah, we've been very lucky to win quite a lot of awards for the business that we've built. So I think we've won like 40 plus awards over the past 3 years. And the thing about awards is, in a way, they're kind of bullshit. They're quite hollow. It's sort of PR. They assess your business. You have to answer a bunch of questions, provide data. But often it's kind of like it's like a school talent show. Like people will pick the shiniest, nicest business. And I suppose we're quite shiny and nice because of our mission, something that people believe in, because we've built cool tech, we've got big clients. Like at the moment, we're shiny and nice. I think as a founder, you just have to make sure that you don't believe your own bullshit and read too much into that, because even if you won all these awards, you can still have fundamental problems in your business that you have to resolve. But I say what is important about awards is the momentum and the perception. People will call them like vanity metrics. But the reality is vanity metrics are actually quite important when you're a startup, whether it's winning awards, social media followers. These are all the kind of very crude things that signal to the world that you are a business on a kind of high growth path that's going to rocket towards success. And that's really important to create a perception amongst other people that you're someone that's worth doing business with. And also a perception within your team that they've picked the right racehorse. So do not let people tell you that something is just a vanity metric at the start of your journey. Vanity metrics are actually quite important. So I think that's how we see the awards at Zero Gravity. They've been really useful in terms of building momentum behind our brand, but we don't buy into them too deeply in terms of does that mean we've actually built a great business or not, but they're great for momentum. I think in terms of what I'm most proud about, I think it's now seeing some of the students who first signed up to the platform in 2018 when I launched actually now be in the real world absolutely thriving in big boy and girl jobs. So for instance, one of the first students in Zero Gravity platform was a girl called Natalie, who grew up in a small town in sort of southwest Wales, and one of those towns, good 2 or 3 hours away from the biggest city. And no one in her school had ever gone to Oxford before, and she used the zero gravity platform and won an offer to study at University of Oxford, where she did a history and politics, I think. And then she went to university, got a degree, and then even though she had this great degree on her CV, because she wasn't surrounded by a great professional network and didn't know how to get work experience, she really struggled to get a graduate job. And she actually went back home to Wales, and she was working in a local Tesco because she was unable to get a graduate job. And this was just at the point that Zero Gravity was launching our sort of careers product, helping students get into internships and careers. So she was one of the first students to use that. And we managed to get her a job working with one of the top lawyers in London as kind of his associate. And he was so impressed with her kind of work and growth over the next 18 months that they actually ended up building a law firm together in London. So she was the number one hire of a big American law firm that's just opened their first ever office in the UK. And that law firm has actually recruited now 30 interns through Zero Gravity and 3 graduates to join their team. They've essentially built Zero Gravity into their hiring process. So I thought that was a great story of someone who joined us at the age of 17, used this to get into university. But getting into university is not enough. It's helpful, but it's not going to get you where you want to go to. So we had to give her the support to also get into a career. She's got that now, and she's now probably one of the most famous young lawyers in the UK because of that crazy journey she's been on. It's stories like that that make me think, when this product works, it really, really works. And how can I make sure that tens of thousands of people get the Natalie experience? And that's the thing that motivates me. So that's the stuff that I really read into. Like when you meet people who've not just had one success through the platform, but it's changed their entire trajectory, that for me is indicative of creating real value.
And what's the end goal for Zero Gravity?
I think to build the business that breaks the link between background and opportunity. It's a big vision, but people kind of forget that what we have now is not the status quo. Like societies through history have radically changed in terms of access to opportunity. It sounds a bit silly. Someone like me 100 years ago would not have gone to university. I would have gone straight down a coal mine, probably in Morley or South Yorkshire. Sounds a bit weird now, but that literally would have been the reality of my life had I been born 100 years ago. So societies have changed actually quite dramatically over centuries. But I think we've kind of got stuck in the past couple of decades where we haven't actually continued to spread opportunity to more people. So I believe things can be better than the way they are. I think disrupting the system of getting people into university and careers is the absolute key to doing that. Because if we have more people from not just working class backgrounds, but normal backgrounds, running universities, running companies, being the leaders of the future, they're more likely to make a decision that is better for everyone rather than just a narrow group of people.
And is that the long-term goal?
Yeah.
Or is that like a 10-year goal? Is that for the foreseeable?
That's going to take, trying to break the link between background and opportunity in the UK. That ain't going to happen overnight. That is a vision that's going to span decades. But I built Zero Gravity not as a business to make a quick exit. Make a quick buck. I built it as something where I wanted to define this new category around social mobility of how do you find talented people who don't necessarily see their own potential and break them into elite institutions. So I want Zero Gravity to be seen as almost like the metaphor for doing that. In the same way people will say, grab an Uber. Like Uber's become a metaphor for getting a taxi to get around the city, or let's have a delivery. It's synonymous with someone coming to bring an order to your house. I want Zero Gravity to be synonymous with, if you're a kid from a low-income background, getting into top university or career. Zero Gravity is a brand which is synonymous with that. That's what success looks like to me.
I love that. And I think as entrepreneurs and individuals itself, we don't take inventory of ourselves. And what I mean by that is we don't ask ourselves what we're doing really well, that we need to continue to build momentum. But then we also don't ask ourselves what we're doing wrong in order for us to become better entrepreneurs, founders, employees. What's one thing that Joe needs to work on? It doesn't necessarily have to be business related, that will make him a better person, better version of himself, better founder, better employee, better colleague?
Yeah, it's really difficult to give yourself feedback because even if you're the most self-aware person in the world, when you're running at the speed of lightning as you are as a startup founder, very difficult to step back and take stock of like what you're doing. So what I try and do is I sit down with the executive team of my company, try and do it once a quarter, where I don't just give feedback to them. I also ask for feedback for me as well, because I'm a young founder. I know I'm not the finished product. I've never had a proper job other than this. So I have all of these kind of traits and behaviors which I've just kind of learned myself, and they're not always necessarily the right ones. So I think a big thing that I still need to improve on probably is a bit like we spoke about at the beginning, is around the perfectionism and focus. I'm still the person who, even now, where I've hired people, built systems, I want to kind of be involved in the detail of everything. And I think that's really good to an extent. As a founder, I think you need to be on top of the details. You need to be there to poke, prod, challenge people. I think that's a really good thing. You don't want to just be a kind of shameless manager who kind of sits on top of a castle and just hires people and sets strategies. You want to be in the detail, but working out how to do that in a way that empowers people, I think is more tricky than it sounds. How do you make sure you're in the details, but you give people the agency to make their own decisions? That's something that I've had to grow and learn over time, because as I mentioned, I'd never seen anyone else do that before. I'm just learning this all myself. So I think that's the thing I still want to reflect on and grow. How do you empower whilst being in the details? I think is the big challenge.
Yeah, no, I think it's really difficult to do the both. But on the flip side, what would you say is one thing that you're doing really well, that you're really proud of?
I think setting a culture of high standards is something that I've done from day dot. And I think that's the most important thing, because then that rubs off on everyone else. So I think the thing that pleases me now is like walking in the office. You know, you've had a couple of meetings in the morning, come into the office in the afternoon, and you just see this buzz of activity, and people are doing stuff without you being there as the puppet master behind it, sort of controlling everyone on strings. People are naturally doing all of the things that you as a founder would want people to do. And you can't take that for granted. That is a sign of a hiring process well done, of a culture well built. And I think setting that sort of culture of high standards and expectations from the beginning, I think has been something that's rubbed off, and now is not something that constantly needs me to be sat there in every meeting to instill it, because it's naturally there in all the people that we've hired. So I know that's a bit cliche, but honestly, you can't do anything without a team, and that's probably the thing I'm most proud about at this stage of the journey.
Well, you've created an operation, right? You're able to, if you zoom out, what you've created, you don't have to be there, and ultimately that is success. So
exactly, like building a culture is the thing that puts you in the meeting room when you're not actually physically present.
Exactly.
So that is why people should take culture seriously, rather than just seeing it as the kind of warm, fluffy thing that you talk about on LinkedIn, but you don't actually think about day to day.
Yeah. We'll probably wrap up. So I asked my guests a bunch of different questions just to see what their perspective is. And the first one is, what advice would you give to someone starting out?
Starting a business?
Yeah, let's do starting a business.
Well, first thing I'd say, reality check. You're not going to be an overnight success, and that's okay. Like building a startup is like chewing on glass, and you've got to have unreal levels of perseverance. So the first thing I do is reality check them. And I think that's the right thing to do, because if you don't do that, otherwise people will drop out as soon as they see any sort of adversity or things not happening as quickly as they want to. So reality check. But the second thing is I'd say that if you do persevere, it is possible to succeed, even if you are someone with no skills, no experience, no track record of startup success, because everyone has to be a first-time founder at some point. And no, like, why you, why not? Like, if you are someone who has faced your problem firsthand, you have deep insights about that problem that a 50-year-old executive with 30 years of experience and a bunch of incredible skills does not have. So why couldn't it be you who becomes the next big thing? All of these incredible founders who are now celebrated, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, at one point these people were all first-time founders with no track record, skills, or experience. So why not you?
Do you think people don't utilize their potential?
I think most people are way too risk averse, and because they've had setbacks and knockbacks in their life, out of kind of almost like a defense mechanism, circumscribe what they think they can achieve. And I think that's just really, I mean, it's part of human nature to an extent, but I think it's just a bit depressing more than anything else. Like, you have to be your own champion in many ways. And that doesn't mean you have to be constantly evangelizing yourself to other people. Like, that can be annoying. But I think you have to try and maintain that naive delusion that there's more to your life and what you could do than what you can currently see in front of you right now. And that's the crazy delusion that I kind of harnessed when I started Zero Gravity. And I've been lucky in terms of I've been able to make it somewhat of a reality so far. But even where I am now on my journey, I know that to get to the next point, I still need to indulge those delusions. Like, yes, I'm a startup founder, I manage a team, manage a company with big clients, generating revenue, all this impact. But like, we're still not we're not the next Netflix or Deliveroo yet. We've got a long, long way to go. I've still got a lot of delusion that I need to harness to get to that next point. So everyone's got to keep doing that, but be deluded is my advice.
I love that.
In terms of what you can do in your own life.
Yeah, I love that. And who's had the biggest significant impact on your life, and why?
A bit cliche, but my mum.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have the right values and behaviors, you can't achieve anything. And they're growing up in a single parent family where she was not only kind of the sole breadwinner, but also the sole caregiver as well. I think even though I might not have always appreciated at the time growing up where you got your mum being strict and telling you off, the values she instilled then are the things that keep me going now. So bit cliche, but honestly, genuinely, my mum is the answer I would give. Because without that, nothing else would have happened.
And what's one quote that you live by?
I don't really live by any quotes, to be honest. I think aphorisms are useful in terms of provoking thought, but sometimes can be a bit hollow. Trying to think off the top of my head, but I think just going back to what I said, the run towards danger concept probably is the main one. So I don't know how to express that in a quote, but that's the thing I probably constantly calibrate myself with. And I come in here today. It's like it's not easy doing a podcast where you can be asked anything, and you got to have a conversation with someone you've never met before. So like before the cameras flick on, you do have that sort of slight nervous feeling in your belly, but kind of being willing to kind of mentally shift past that and say that this is a really good thing to do, because you're not only going to have a great conversation with someone, but maybe inspire someone else watching out there. Yeah. Someone sat in their bed now, maybe watching this episode you've never met before, where what you say could maybe impact their journey. Like, that's the sort of thing that gets you to fight through. So like, just constantly running towards danger. Yeah. Say the quote that I live by.
Mine's kind of similar for the pod. It's run towards failure, not success. Because ultimately the successes will come if you encounter failures. Because by law, the law of opposites, the opposite of failure is success. The opposite of success is failure. So I really do love that run towards danger quote. Last question for you, Joe, is obviously the podcast is called the Endless Race Podcast. The reason behind it is because we're all running this endless race called life. Yep. There's an endless amount of opportunity, success, and failure. There's always someone above you, and there's always someone below you, no matter how successful you are. And that is always endless. So when you hear the phrase, the endless race, in relation to life, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice expression in terms of there's always somebody that you're chasing.
Yeah.
That you want to become or you respect. And there's someone always behind you, chasing you, wanting what you've got and what you have. And my biggest piece of advice would be everyone focuses on what's ahead of them and forgets about what's behind them. And I actually think there's a huge amount of value of helping the people behind you, because I found so many times that like genuinely supporting, mentoring people who want to be in your position is not just a kind of nice thing to do. It's not just the sort of thing that gives you the fuzzy feeling, but it's genuinely a competitive advantage, because what you start to do is not only build a network of people who've benefited from your support, but you increase your surface area of opportunity. I've benefited, like the zero gravity students that we've got into university and careers. That is my biggest resource now. Like they may see themselves as people who've been helped by the platform, but actually they're my biggest help as well, because the way that we get companies to partner with us is often when they've hired one of our members. The way we recruit talented people into our business, often from referrals of people I know, speaking at events, winning awards, often it comes out the network I've built. So do not think that there's no point helping people behind you who are running towards what you've got. Actually, you can turn that into an incredible resource and competitive advantage where doing good is not just doing good for other people in the world, but also yourself as well.
And I'm a big believer that the energy that you put in is the energy that you get out. So if you help someone along your journey, inevitably someone's going to help you in your journey. It may not be the same person, but it would definitely be someone else along your journey. That's how I see it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's almost like the cosmic law of the universe, right? Yeah. But I found that it's not a sunk cost helping someone else. It's an investment. It's not an expense.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, Joe, it's been a pleasure. Where can the people find you? Zero Gravity. If there's any students listening, get onto the Zero Gravity platform. Where can they find it?
zerogravity.co.uk. Takes 2 minutes to sign up.
Perfect. Joe, it's been a pleasure.
Great.
Guys, see you on the next episode. Peace.